I'm Conrad Askland, a music producer and a music director with Cirque du Soleil.
My guest today, beyond being a playwright, beyond being the Pope Trump guy, he has worked with Cirque du Soleil for decades. Please welcome back to the show, Conrad Askland. How's it going, sir?
Great to be with you again.
That is just amazing. I mean, like Cirque du Soleil is such a storied brand, one that just has wowed audiences for generations. So how'd you get started with something so iconic?
My first introduction with Cirque du Soleil was around 1996. I was in a CD store back then.
What's that?
Yeah, what's a CD? And I saw this album. I was in the classical section, and these weird-looking musicians, and it said Cirque du Soleil. It was the Alegria soundtrack. I didn't know back then, I didn't know Cirque du Soleil was a circus. I thought it was a band. I had no idea. And I loved that soundtrack so much. It's the only thing I played in my car for over a year. About 10 years later, I started with Cirque du Soleil. I started with Cirque du Soleil back in 2008.
But there is that fine line between being like, that's pretty cool, let me go about my business, and you going, no, I got to get myself involved with this. What was that moment like?
I saw in Vegas the show Mystere.
That was my first as well. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
And then, the water show at the Bellagio. After watching my mother turned to me and said, "What do you think?" And I said to her, "That is art. I've wasted my life. That's what I want to do." I was so blown away by the music and the artistry of both Mystere and it just blew my mind. And I wanted to know, how did they put the music together? How did that work? I couldn't fully comprehend it.
Yeah. No, it's a sense of wonder. In my 20s, living here in LA, the whole idea of the Californians going to Vegas, it's true. We just scuttle there, you scuttle back out. And one time I was with the boys. I'm like, I want to see a show. And you're 21 years old. Like, show? They're great to see shows. But I put my foot down and I went to Mystere, and I had a very similar experience. Saw it 3 times, took my mom, she loved it. But it really is a multi-layered experience. Yeah, you're in a seat, and yeah, you're seeing a show, but it's all about the feelings of things. And I wanted to ask you about that, about the intentionality of the feelings and the things conveyed when you sit down and buy a ticket to a Cirque du Soleil show.
Cirque du Soleil is a Canadian company. It's based out of Montreal. There's a very strong artistic aesthetic with Cirque du Soleil. Anyone who's seen a Cirque du Soleil show knows this is not traditional circus. And a lot of that feeling, that artistic drive, it comes from the people in Montreal and up in Quebec that just have this just wonderful artistic vision, that it's not just about the circus tricks, it's about the story and how it's presented. And this also fills into the music. So I work as the band leader, a music director for Cirque du Soleil shows. And it is always a roller coaster ride how intense the vision is to put all these components together.
Well, talk to me about the collaborative process. Is it kind of like the idea of the show comes first? What concepts? Is it coming more rigid? Like, we want something for this scene or that scene? Like, how does your work impact the greater vision to a Cirque show?
So when they put together a new Cirque du Soleil show, the rehearsal process is called creation. And it is creation because you're creating an entirely new world. Usually there will be a composer that's hired to write the music, and then there will be a creation team, which will be technical, lighting, maybe a choreographer, of course, the artistic directors. My job is to take their vision, the composer's vision, and then get the music ready for performance and make sure it's delivered, for years at a consistent level. The collaboration takes different forms. Sometimes it could be, here's the music, here's how we want it. And sometimes it could be, we need a little transition between these two pieces. Can you come up with some ideas and present it to us? And then, of course, working with the musicians who play live with the soundtrack to bring the vision of the artistic team to the stage.
It could be some kind of debates about how some of these visions come to light. Yes.
In general, as a music director, I see my job is to serve options. So normally a director will say to me, here's the direction of what I want. And then my job is to translate that into technical and musical terms and then present options to them for which direction they want to go. So in my world, it's not often so much a debate. It's more presentation of different creative ideas. And then the fun part is seeing which one the creative team wants to go with.
Talk to me about the first show you ever worked on. I mean, that must have been like on a roller coaster ride, right? You're inside the band, the tent, I guess, and I'm sure you have people in the crowd showing up for you. Must have been kind of a unique experience, to say the least.
My first show with Cirque du Soleil was called Zaya, and it was a resident show in Macau, China, at the Venetian Casino. So not only was I doing my first Cirque du Soleil show, I was living in a foreign country. So I didn't have a lot of friends and family running to see the show because, it's 3,000-mile plane trip. It was very intense. My first show, Zaya with Cirque du Soleil, for me was a boot camp. I've always been, a very hard worker, very structured, very focused. But working with Cirque du Soleil really honed all those traits even more with me. Musically, it felt like a boot camp. I mean, Cirque du Soleil is very demanding, very insistent. And that's an environment that everyone just understands and that they buy into. The beautiful thing about working with Cirque du Soleil is you're surrounded by 100 other people who are also totally focused on their individual craft.
I gotta jump in here and ask a personal question because Macau was on my bucket list. Like, how was that like going to one of the most humid corners of the world, being around such a majestic history and culture to present this version to the public there?
It was surreal. Macau is a party town. It's located an hour ferry ride from Hong Kong. Now, this was from 2008 to 2012 that I lived in Macau. And it's a special administrative region, along with Hong Kong, that's in the process of being handed back over to mainland China. That started, I think, around 1999 with Hong Kong and 2000 with Macau. You're living in China, but it's very Western. I mean, from my apartment, I could order delivery of Pizza Hut, McDonald's, Subway. It is this strange, surreal culture that's Portuguese, Chinese, and with all the gambling, very Western.
Wow. You have traveled the world doing what you do and doing what you love. Can you just like walk me through the stops on the worldwide Conrad Askland tour?
So the latest show that I'm on is Crystal by Cirque du Soleil. It's their ice skating show. And in the last 3 years, we started on the eastern seaboard in the United States. Started in Savannah, Georgia, Boston, went up through New York. Then we went to Europe, mainly Western Europe. And I can't even remember all the countries, but we did Norway, Sweden, France, Portugal, Spain, Belgium, I think 10 cities in Germany. Then from there, we came back to the United States. Then we went to the Middle East and we did shows in Kuwait City and Abu Dhabi. From there to South America, in Sao Paulo. We were 3.5 months in Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Santiago, Chile. Oh, and you know what I forgot in there?
Oof, what?
3.5 months in New Zealand and Australia. I mean,
Wow.
it's all a blur after a while. So with Crystal, we've done 5 continents. The only continent I didn't do was Africa and Antarctica. And what's great for me personally about this tour is when we did Europe, it was mainly Western Europe. When I was with the Veracai show back in 2017, we did Eastern Europe. So I've played almost every country in Europe. I think maybe the exception of 3 countries in the last 8 years. Yeah, I performed in pretty much every European country.
That must have been crazy. On one hand, I want to say, how was that like? But on the other hand, I'm like, talk about the challenges. I mean, that is different time zones, different schedules, different languages, different times to work out. What does a diet look like? Do you bring 1 suitcase or 6? Like, what is that like?
Oh,
In so many continents.
that's a lot of questions. So this is an arena tour, the Crystal Show, which means we're usually in a new city every week. When we're in Europe, that could mean a new country every week. So you do have to like to travel. You do have to like to tour. Now, I'm a road dog. I've been doing tours over 30 years. I love it. But it's not for everyone. So in general, we will perform 4 to 5 days a week, and then we'll have 2 to 3 days off in every country. And that's part of what I really enjoy. I'll, enjoy the local food, hopefully be able to fit a concert in there. I love doing photography and, of course, meeting new musicians worldwide. As far as the food, we have catering teams that travel with us because there are so many different dietary needs with all the different acrobatic artists. And the catering teams can specifically give, the foods that each different group needs. The musicians, usually we're happy with pizza and hamburgers. We're not so picky. The catering is fantastic when you're on tour with Cirque du Soleil.
I can imagine that to be able to have a team and make sure everyone's well fed and well focused on things and having days off to see a bit of the culture as well. Is there a number of how many countries in general have you been? Is it like dozens, 20?
So I think with Crystal, someone just told me the other day, it's 52 or 53 countries
Wow.
that Crystal has traveled to.
Yeah.
And I believe that was the same with the Veracai tour also.
On New Amsterdam Radio, we have a lot of performers, whether it's music or comedy, who have toured. And everyone has their own breaking point when it comes to being on tour and be like, I want to go home. That moment. If you had any kind of like insight or suggestion or advice for someone who is maybe in the middle of a tour, to press through it, see it till it's finished. Is there anything you can share that we could probably use for our own situations?
Yeah, actually, a couple things. I learned this in my 20s. You cannot depend on your tour gig to feed you artistically. And this is a mistake that a lot of artists make, especially musicians. To be fed artistically, you have to do that on your own, on your off time. The gig is your work. It's not there to necessarily feed all the growth you need as an artist. So that means on the days off, you need to put aside some time for your own artistic growth. And also the balance on tour is very precarious. It's very easy for things to get dark. And so you need some balance. So taking the time to do some things you enjoy on the off days. For me, like I said, that's trying different restaurants, photography. I do a lot of historical walking tours. I really enjoy that. For some people, it could be the party scene. For others, it's hikes. For others, reading a book in their hotel room, but finding the balance and finding the things that feed you, so that you're not putting that weight on your gig.
Oh, that's an incredible insight. And I realize the longer I've done this, whether the touring for my end has shifted from stand-up comedy into content creation on the road, I too have become an advocate for walking tours. Show me the city in 3 hours or less. Let's go. That's just crazy. And thank you so much for that, because I do think a lot of us kind of struggle with that, the ones on the performance side.
The walking tours, what's great about that is you can mix in some photography. You're learning about the country you're in. And if you're into architecture, what a wonderful way to be outside and see the architecture of the different countries and cities you're in. I love walking tours. And most of the time, they're 40 or $50 or less. They're really inexpensive.
Yeah, you meet a new friend. He did answer a bit of this in previous questions, but just in general, how has working with a brand like Cirque du Soleil influenced your work outside of that brand when it comes to your own creation?
It's a very rich environment for creativity. I actually use an app to keep track of all my ideas because I have more ideas than I have time on this earth to do. That part's incredible. And the intensity that I'm surrounded with, like I said, everyone in Cirque du Soleil, their particular craft, whether it's carpentry, lighting, the athletics, their entire life is focused on that craft, and you're surrounded by all these very motivated, self-actualized people. That environment, you can't help but be creative and pushing yourself, pushing your own boundaries artistically.
It may be a bit of a cliche here, but I bet if you're going into the trenches with your team around the world, it must have a bit of a familial flavor. Like, feels like you're one giant group.
It is a family. We're a tour family, and like with most tours, I mean, these are the people you're staying in the same hotel, you're eating together, you're breaking bread together, and a lot of times you're doing things on the off days together too, and you're working together, creatively. Most of the time with just pure joy and adrenaline, and with any tour or artistic endeavor, sometimes there are tough times. So yeah, we're really tight as a family and very, very supportive of each other.
You're on these performances, you have your team with you. Let me ask about a personal thing. And we're talking about refilling the cup earlier, but you've done other things outside of Cirque du Soleil. In fact, the last time you were on this podcast, we're talking about one of your fantastic videos, which I got some traction on YouTube. So I gotta ask, where do you find the time?
My off time, I really maximize that time to do creative projects. And this could be photography, writing new music, creating videos. And that fills two other buckets for me. It fulfills the balance of tour life, because doing those things I get great joy from. I love creating new music and new videos. And it also lets me grow creatively and takes that weight off the show. The show is the show. I'm there to be uber focused on it. But in my off time, I'm filling my own cup creatively. So, like right now, I'm in Victoria, BC. We're on tour. After this interview, I'm going to go and start rehearsals up at the venue. But a lot of the work that I do is from hotel rooms, because when you're on tour, you're in a hotel room.
I know this is kind of a fluid question, but how many hours of downtime do you get on a given day? Or is hours? Is it minutes? Is it seconds?
Well, when you're getting the show ready, it's very intense. Like, clear out your schedule. But once the show has settled, which takes quite a while for a Cirque du Soleil show for it to settle, it depends. But usually My call time will be around 4 p.m. And then we're going to finish with the show around 10 or 11. So I do have time to sleep in when we're on tour. And I do get 2 to 3 days off in whatever country we're in. And I do get that time to do whatever I want, relax.
You talk about the performer's high. You go out to a stage and you give your all to your work and you get that instant feedback from a crowd and you might get some notes, you might get some photo ops afterwards. But how do you unwind after being up there for so many hours, 4 p.m. to 11? Most people are in bed by the time you're done, but now you're jazzed or wired.
So usually people on tour keep pretty late hours. It's not uncommon for me to be getting to bed around 3 a.m. But if I'm doing good, I'm usually asleep by 1 a.m.
But if you're like me, I'm in the car going, oh man, I missed that. I totally missed that bit, but that's just me. I'm the one that always said it.
Oh, that's interesting you bring that up. Because everyone is so focused and driven, how do you manage when there was a mistake? Because there's going to be mistakes. We don't take mistakes lightly, but they do happen. And so when you're on a long show run, that's running for years, you have to learn to say, okay, that happened. Be generous with yourself, but then say, okay, what can I do to make sure that doesn't happen again? But people in general, we're a little upset when we make a mistake, but you can't beat yourself up because then you're going to make a mistake again by thinking about that.
You raise a good point because the third time I saw Mystere, because I got used to the show, not to single out Mystere, but it's one of the few Cirque shows I saw multiple times. There was a mistake with some of the acts. Like there was a miscue with one of the acrobats, and the music kept playing. And I wondered, how did that work on your end? Were you watching what's happening and making sure there are cues being hit, but you want to be able to cover or help out your other performers when mistakes do happen?
I'm the band leader for the show, and the band leader is in charge of the music. In other companies, it would be called the music director. The musicians play the music live with the show, but everything is timed to the acts. And depending on which act it is, it could be a certain jump, a certain movement. It should be transparent so the audience doesn't notice these builds. All they notice is that when they watch a Cirque du Soleil show, they're invested emotionally. Part of my job is running the music on a computer soundtrack with a click track, and the musicians play along with this. And then the music is formatted in such a way that we can go longer or shorter depending on what the trick is. I'm playing a piano or accordion. I'm watching a monitor and I'm watching for a certain action. I'm watching for a jump where we do a big swell, or a land where we do an accent. The whole show is meticulously timed to the action of the acrobats. And I've had one instance where an artistic director called me in the office and said, this one cue, can we get that a half second sooner? Now, the click is going like this, right? So it's like, 1.5 clicks. That's how precise the vision of the creative team at Cirque du Soleil is. Can you get that a half second sooner?
So precise to call the meeting. That's how you know.
Yeah.
That's really fun stuff. And we're talking with Conrad Askland, who has just been just a boon of information about this brand. And gotta shift gears a bit though, because you said you're in British Columbia, and just a short trip from that city is the city of Seattle, where it's a little birdie might have told me that you performed at the Seattle Opera. Is that true?
Yeah. So I have performed at the Seattle Opera and the Grand Ole Opry. I don't know if there's too many artists that could say that. As I was based in Bellevue, Washington, outside Seattle, and as a child, I did classical music as a boy soprano. I was with the Northwest Boy Choir. Then I sang in choruses with Seattle Opera. We did some concerts with Seattle Symphony, but I actually had a lead role with Seattle Opera in A Mall and the Night Visitors. And I performed at the Seattle Opera House in the operas Carmen, Boris Godunov, and Tosca. And then later in my 30s, I performed at the Grand Ole Opry on their live TV show.
You're absolutely right. I do think that's a very short list, but it's pretty cool. Huh?
Well, it was. I mean, as an adult playing Grand Ole Opry, and this was on their Saturday night nationally televised show, so everyone got to see it. That was exciting. But as a child performer, performing on stage at the Seattle Opera, you know, I'm like in 5th grade. This is 5th to 8th grade, performing with these world-acclaimed singers, a full orchestra, and back then, the intensity of the conductors and their tantrums back then, this also kind of informed my view of art and the stage and the intensity that you can bring to the creation of new works.
What really pushes you through those moments when, hey, maybe you are between shows, or hey, maybe a very attractive or lucrative desk job comes across your desk and say, hey, look, do you really want to be on the road? How about you sit in this cubicle and balance these sevens? Like, you know what your path is, you know what you're good at, but what pushed you through those times of lulls when it comes to work?
Yeah, sometimes when you're between gigs, there's a different path that looks like it might be more sustainable, might be more balanced. That's just not for me. I made a personal commitment when I was 20 years old. I was actually at a fork in the road when I was 20 years old. And I decided I was going to pursue a path in the performing arts. No matter how good or bad it was, I was going to stick with it. And that's been a big deal to me. I don't know why I made that commitment. A part of it was just realizing in this life, you have one path. Well, you have one ticket for a path. And I just wanted to see where it would go. How much could I do? What would happen? Kind of a curiosity. Now, I have had an advantage in that I've never been married and I don't have children. So this lifestyle can be very self-centered. And, you know, if I had a family, I would not probably be able to pursue this career as I have, because there are highs and the highs are awesome, but there are also lows when you're between gigs. That's easier for me now because I have a lot of content that I can always be creating. But when I was in my 20s, yeah, those were difficult times.
Thank you so much for your candid nature. I think that helps out so many people. And talk about highs. I mean, look at this now. If you're traveling the world, people know your name. They're naming tricks after you. Like, let's talk about that. What is the Conrad? You were talking about this before you went live today.
Yeah, so one of the extreme skaters in the Cirque du Soleil Crystal show, his name is Jojo, and I love Jojo. He's so much fun. And he's an influencer. He's had millions of followers on different social media platforms. He has this crazy new trick he does in the hockey act. And the first time I saw it, I ran up to it intermission. I said, "Is that a new trick? I've never seen it before." And he calls that trick the Conrad. And so now when I watch the hockey act in Crystal as I'm performing with the show, if he's doing that track, I'd be like, here comes the Conrad. I did a fun little video about it that shows the trick that's on my YouTube channel.
Yeah, when you were telling me, I was a bit confused because I wouldn't know how to take that if someone's like, "Yeah, all the twisted thing that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna name after you." But I'm so glad that's pretty cool. You're like in the annals of history here, being part of the show.
Yeah, I'm part of Cirque du Soleil history now.
Yeah. Well, as we record this, it's the middle of May of 2025. We're approaching the halfway point. But what does the future hold for you as far as just travel the world, performing something else on the horizon?
So this show will finish on June 8th, 2025. We close in Vancouver, BC, Canada. And after that, I'm not sure. And this is the way it normally is. When you finish one gig, you usually don't know what the next gig will be or when it will be. So I have a lot of creative projects that I'll be working on out of my home studio. And then, as usual, I wait for the call. And the call could be, hey, would you like to do this tour in 6 months? And sometimes the call is, we need someone right away. Are you available to start in 5 days? And you never know. So I just do my thing. I work on my projects. I'll be creating more videos and writing a lot of new music while I'm at home, enjoying that time with my family. And then you get the call to go back out on the road again.
Is it like Commissioner Gordon and Batman, or like, oh man, Turkmenistan needs you, we need you to fly out? Or is it kind of like, we're thinking about things, you want to audition, kind of, sort of? Like, how does that work?
So sometimes it's like that. Like, well, right now I have some things where people are like, would this be interesting? But nothing's signed. Uh, I don't count it until I've signed a contract. But a lot of times, yeah, it is more like Commissioner Gordon. We need someone right away. And I'm usually brought into shows. I have a very broad background of musical styles. I worked for 16 years in Southern California as a music producer and audio engineer at a recording studio. So I have a lot of general background with different music styles, doing orchestrations and working with a lot of different types of personalities. So a lot of times I'm brought in as kind of a fixer for different situations on tour.
Wow, I guess you're a different kind of superhero at that point. Call Conrad. I love it, man. And I love this conversation because there's a lot of things, even though I have not worked with Cirque du Soleil before, just because your journey of having the formal training and then trusting and betting yourself to make that jump with the brand you have affinity for is so helpful and really so inspiring. And I'm so glad you shared about some of the lulls in what we do, because it is a wave. And sometimes it's fun to ride it, but if the next wave may be a bit of a time there. So
Usually when you look at those times between shows, those are normally times of great artistic growth because it forces you to do something new. And usually when you look back in retrospect, you can usually say, oh, I'm really glad that this thing happened, this thing that I thought was negative at the time, because that pushed me over here, which led me to this, which I loved. If that makes sense. The things we often think are stressful or bad in the moment,
yeah.
later we look back and go, wow, what a blessing that was. So I've learned to follow the river is the way I think of it. I am following this river of life because I have control over some of it, but not all.
Poignant end for that one. If someone wanted to follow the river and follow you on social media of the world, book you for something, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and now's the time to share.
Most of my videos, my long form videos, are on YouTube and my channel. It's called Conrad Askland, my name. I would say YouTube is a good place to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's more stuff coming, of course, down the pike. Conrad, thank you so much again to be on the show, to share your insight, your knowledge, and maybe you might encourage me to pick up an instrument again, because I have totally didn't try to do my bass guitar action in for almost a decade now. I'm going to have to go back to that.
There you go. That sounds great.
This is new episode of the podcast for creatives. Thanks again.